Презентацию возьмите. Маленькую.
Ага, вот это. Да.
Все.
Все хорошо. Спасибо. Да, я сдам на вахту. Ну, конечно. Good day. We start our lecture. Do you hear me? Our today's topic is lecture number 1, Ancient Truths in the 9th, 15th centuries. So we start exploration of history of Russia. Write down the topic of our today's lecture, Ancient Truths in the 9th, 15th centuries. So today we should explore such questions. First, creation of a state of Rus, basic concepts and stages of the formation of statehood. The second one, ancient Rus in the period of feudal disunity. The third, the Mongol Tatar invasion, 1237-1241, and its consequences, reflection of a Swedish-German aggression. Fourth question, Russian lands and principalities in the second half of 13th, the first half of the 15th century, between the Horde and Lithuania. Literature for today's lecture is the following: the Cambridge History of Russia, and a companion to Russian history. Both books are available for you. Well, do you heard me? Write me please if you heard me. So, we start exploration of history of Russia with the founder of Rurikid dynasty, I mean Prince Rurik, the appearance of Rurik. Russian monk Nestor, in the tale of bygone years, claims that the tribes of the Ilmen Slavs, Krivichs, Chuds, who were at war with each other, were invited by the Varangian prince in 862 to restore order. So, Rurik was invited by the Slav tribes in a way to restore order. Our land is large and plentiful, but there is no order in it. Yes, you go and reign and draw us. The invitation was received by three Varangian brothers, Rurik, who became a prince in Novgorod, Sinuos in Belozera, and Truvor in Izborsk. After death of Rurik, Rurik died at 879. After his death, prophetic Oleg, nicknamed as prophetic, became Russian prince, the second one in dynasty of Rurikids. Oleg was a relative, he was not close relative of Rurik, but he was a member of his princely team, and Oleg became a very famous Russian prince because in 882 he seized Kiev and joined two Protestant associations. So Oleg founded new centralized old Russian state, consisted of two so-called parts, with a center in Novgorod and with a center in Kiev. Kiev, Oleg made the capital of the emerging East Slavic state. Here is a portrait of Oleg, so we can conclude that, following to this portrait, Oleg was a very talented military commander. Indeed, he provided several military campaigns against neighbor Slavic tribes, against enemies of Russian state. Nowadays, historians have dispute over the date of the creation of the state Rus, and we can discuss two opposite theories. First theory is known as Norman theory. Norman theory appeared thanks to German scientists Bayer, Miller, Schlosser, who are in the Russian service, and it was nominated by the Norman theory. Using the tale of bygone years of monk Nestor, they argued that the state of the Eastern Slavs was formed by Varangians. Varangians are Scandinavians, and the Slavs themselves were unable to create the state. So the word Rus they also considered Varangian, according to their point of view. Contrary to this concept, Mikhail Vasilievich Lomonosov, famous Russian scientist, historian, poet, he was a fan of chemistry, physics also. So Lomonosov substantiated the anti-Norman theory. According to his view, the state was created by the Eastern Slavs themselves without any involvement of the Scandinavians, and the word Rus has Slavic roots. Contemporary Russian historians support now theory of Lomonosov and don't support Norman theory, so-called Norman theory. We Guess now that our descendants, old Russian Slavic tribes, formed old Rus with a little support of Varangians, with a little support of Scandinavians, primarily themselves. Prophetic Oleg. Oleg tried to provide very active foreign policy. With him in 907 and 911, two successful campaigns were made to Constantinople, and it seems to me you know that Constantinople is a former name of nowadays Istanbul. The Greeks were forced to conclude a treaty on favorable terms for the Russians. Under the signed contract, Russian merchants had the right to live for a month at the expense of the Greeks in Constantinople, the center of Byzantine Empire, but they were obliged to walk around the city without weapons. So Oleg provided a fast development of trade between ancient Rus and Byzantine Empire. Prince Igor was a successor of prophetic Oleg. Oleg died in 912, and Igor, a son of Rurik, became Russian prince after death of Oleg. Igor ruled over Russian land up to 945. In 944, the treaty with Byzantium Empire was confirmed, but on less favorable terms. In 945, Igor was killed. He was cruelly killed by the Drevlyans for trying to reassemble their tribute. The exact collection of tribute was not yet ordered. A collection of tribute was a very old Russian custom, and it was a kind of taxation, of old Russian taxation. Igor's wife, Princess Olga, years of her rule, 945, 957. He was very clever, talented ruler, and probably, and maybe indeed, he was the first woman in Russian throne. She cruelly avenged the death of her husband. The capital of Drevlyans, Iskorosten, was burnt out totally. Nevertheless, Olga was forced to streamline the collection of tribute. She established so-called lessons, the title of the size of tribute, and the graveyards, the place where the tribute was collected. Thus, the formation of a tax system was initiated. In the reign of Igor and Olga, to Kiev were joined the land of the Tivertans and finally the Drevlyans. So, Olga was the first among Kievan rulers to accept Christianity. She was the first Russian ruler who adopted Christianity. She was baptized in Constantinople. It was a very brave decision of her because during this period of time, primarily all Russian inhabitants, all inhabitants of ancient Rus were pagan. They were not Christians, they were pagan. The son of Olga and Igor had name Sviatoslav. Sviatoslav, write please years of his rule, 957, 972. He ruled over Russian land from 957 up to 972. As you can imagine, looking at his portrait, let's have a look at his portrait. As you can imagine, he was very brave military commander. He was very talented military commander. And he had a very high level of authority among warriors under his command. During his reign, he annexed the land of Vatici, defeated Volga Bulgaria, subdued the Mordvinian tribes, defeated Khazar Khaganate. The strongest enemy of all Rus was exactly Khazar Khaganate. So, ancient Rus, or Russia, has become a fully sovereign state after total defeat over Khazar Khaganate. And he died returning back after campaign against Byzantium Empire. Sviatoslav's detachment was defeated by the Pechenegs. Pechenegs was a title of nomads, and Sviatoslav himself was killed. He was brave enough, and even enemies recognized his bravery after his killing in a struggle. Struggle was very cruel, and Pecheneg's Khan was greatly impressed with the bravery and with the strength of Sviatoslav. After several years, son of Sviatoslav, Vladimir, nicknamed the Red Sun, Vladimir the Red Sun, came to power. It took place in 980 years of his rule, 980 up to 1015. Look at the slide. You can imagine how he looked like. In 980, he attempted to carry out the first religious reform. A single pantheon of the most revered pagan gods, led by Perun, was created. To worship these deities should have been in the whole state, but the reform of Vladimir Red Sun failed. So, initially he tried to reform pagan religion, but pagan religion was not true from his point of view, and pagan religion did not suit his ideas to reform Russian state, to strengthen Russian state. Nevertheless, the reform of 980 prepared the conditions for the adoption of Christianity. Baptism of Russia. So, as you do know, nowadays Russian Federation is multi-religious state. There are several religions in nowadays Russia, including Christianity, Orthodox Christianity, Islam, Muslim religion, Judaism, and even Buddhism. Vladimir decides to adopt a monotheistic religion instead of pagan religion. According to legend, representatives of three religions came to him. They were representatives of Islam, Judaism, and Christianity. The prince rejected Islam proposition under the pretext that he forbade the use of wine, of alcohol, and required many other restrictions. He did not accept Judaism because the Jews who professed him lost their state and were scattered all over the world. Roman faith, Catholicism, was rejected because of the primacy of the Pope over secular sovereigns and because the worship is conducted in Latin, contrary to common spread Russian of the Russian lands. Only the sermon of representative of the Byzantine Orthodox Church made a favorable impression on Vladimir. After that, he sent his ambassadors to different countries. Returning, they called the Greek faith the best, and the Greek church and church service the most beautiful. The choice of Vladimir in favor of orthodoxy was due to following reasons. Let's write several reasons, and that's why Prince Vladimir chose Orthodox religion, Christianity. He preferred Christianity among other religions, best of all. The prince's desire to unite the population into one people and thereby strengthen the state and his power. So, He wanted to strengthen his power. He wanted to strengthen his state. The second reason was Christianity suited the mentality of the Eastern Slavs most of all, and Vladimir himself supported Christianity. The third reason was the long-standing trade and diplomatic relations with the Byzantine Empire. Byzantium Empire was the closest neighbor of ancient Rus, and that's why, because of the presence of very close trade, merchant ties, very close economic ties, political ties, cultural ties, Vladimir preferred Orthodox Christianity as the state religion of Russia. Write please a date of baptism of Russia. Baptism of Russia took place in 988. In 988, the baptism of Russia took place. Ancient Rus was baptized in several decades after baptism of Russia. Initially, Kievan inhabitants were baptized, and after that, inhabitants of other Russian cities were baptized also. The flourishing of the ancient Russian state is associated with the name of Yaroslav the Wise. So, the next Russian prince, Yaroslav, nicknamed the Wise. Write down, please, years of his rule: 1019, 1054. And you can ask me question, why Yaroslav was nicknamed as the Wise? He was really the Wise because he was very clever, very talented political leader of Russia. When Vladimir died in 1015, his son Svyatopolk was on the throne of Kiev. But Svyatopolk was not good ruler. He was not honest ruler. He was a liar and he was very cruel. Vladimir's influential squad on the throne wanted to see other sons of Vladimir, Boris and Gleb. Boris and Gleb are represented at the slide on the right. Svyatopolk ordered them to be killed because he did not want them to be rulers instead of him. He hated them, despite they were his brothers, but he hated them. The news of the murder of Boris and Gleb stirred the East Slavic society. The Russian Orthodox Church called them the first Russian saints because of their tragic death. Svyatopolk received the nickname Cursed, Svyatopolk the Cursed. Svyatopolk was opposed by his brother Yaroslav. Yaroslav was very angry after he heard news about murder of his brothers, Boris and Gleb. And Yaroslav at the time reigned in Novgorod. In 1019, Yaroslav established himself on the throne of Kiev. Svyatopolk disappeared. Svyatopolk escaped from Kiev and disappeared. Here is a portrait, look at the slide please, here is a portrait of Yaroslav the Wise, how he looked like, Yaroslav the Wise. Yaroslav the Wise. Under Yaroslav the Wise, Russia reached its climax. He patronized education, painting, and construction of buildings. With him, the first public schools appeared. There was a first set of laws. The first well-known Russian set of laws, code of laws, is Russian truth. Please underline. During the time of rule of Yaroslav the Wise, a first Russian code of laws, the Russian truth, was adopted. According to his will, a lot of monasteries appeared. The largest of them became Kiev-Pechersky Monastery in Kiev. After death of Yaroslav, we met a process of feudal fragmentation of Rus. What does it mean, fragmentation? After flourishing of ancient Rus, fragmentation took place. Fragmentation is a natural process of economic strengthening and political isolation of principalities. As you remember, ancient Rus consisted of several principalities. The most influential principality was Kievan Principality, but also we can meet another principalities, for example, Chernigiv Principality, or, for example, Galich-Volyn Principality, Vladimir Principality, and another. Shortly before his death, Yaroslav the Wise divided lands between his three elder sons, Iziaslav, Sviatoslav, and Vsevolod. But he did it so that the possessions of the older sons mutually shared each other. It was almost impossible to manage them independently. The Grand Duke was not going to divide the united Russia into independent states. He expected that now, as a single whole, it would be controlled not by one person, but by the entire princely family. But, in fact, all Rus, after death of the last son of Yaroslav, the Iziaslav, ancient Rus was divided onto large quantity of states, of so-called prince possessions. At the beginning of the process of fragmentation, approximately 15 principalities existed, and by the beginning of the 13th century, almost approximately 75 principalities existed. Vladimir Monomach. Vladimir Monomach. Vladimir Monomach was the most well-known leader of Russia, the most well-known prince of Russia. Monomach was his nickname. Look at this slide, please, very attentively. You can see a special cap at the head of Vladimir Monomach, and this cap was known as a cap of Monomach. Monomach. This cap of Monomach is very famous and very important in our native Russian history because, according to tradition established after death of Vladimir Monomach, each another Russian ruler, each another successor of Vladimir Monomach used the cap of Monomach during procedure of coronation. Vladimir Monomach spent a lot of efforts in a way to consolidate principalities in the whole state, but all the attempts of him had a very short time effect, because after his death, his son Mstislav ruled for a few years, and after the death of his son Mstislav the Great, Russian state, all Rus, eventually divided onto several parts, several fully independent principalities. So we can conclude that after 1132, Kievan Rus finally disintegrates into 15 principalities, roughly corresponding to the territories of the former tribal unions. Each of the principalities was the lord, etc., was in the hereditary possession of one of the representatives of the Rurik dynasty. Old Russian princes, the heads of principalities, very often were involved into hereditary wars, civil wars between each other. They tried to prove that each of them was the strongest one, the most influential, but in common result, Russian state suffered from their wars. And now let's talk about Mongol Tatar invasion to Russian land. Mongol Tatar invasion to Russian land. Look at this slide, please. You can see at this slide a portrait of old-time medieval military commander, famous military commander Chinggis Khan. In the 12th, 13th centuries, nomadic tribes of the Mongols occupied the territory of modern Mongolia and Buryatia at the far east of Russia. At the beginning of the 13th century, they emerged under the rule of one of the khans, Temujin. Temujin was his real name, and after adoption of the title of Great Khan, he received the name Chinggis Khan. In 1206, at the Kurultai, a congress of the tribal nobility, he was elected leader of Mongolian tribes. And after that, it was decided to start aggressive campaigns. Chinggis Khan proclaimed the necessity to realize very aggressive foreign policy. He tried to seize his neighbors and their lands, and he proclaimed the necessity to conquer all the world. Look at this slide, please. You can see on it a territory, a lands conquered by Chinggis Khan during his life. Mongolian army was distinguished by its excellent organization and iron discipline. Since 1211, they have conquered northern China, the shores of the Caspian Sea, Armenia, the Caucasus, Black Sea steppes, Siberia, Khorasan, northern Iran, and other lands. Each conquered people had to supply the soldiers to the Mongols, further strengthening them. Therefore, an army approached to Russian lands, which absorbed the power of almost all the Asia. Already in the first major clash in the Azov steppes on the river Kalka in 1223, united Russian forces and Polovtsan forces could not resist the Mongolian army and suffered a crushing defeat. So you should remember a first battle between Russian Polovtsan army and Mongolian army. This battle, unsuccessful for united Russian Polovtsan army, took place in 1223. In 1235, the Kurultai Mongolian Congress decided to invade to Russian lands. The disparate Russian princedoms, which once formed Kievan Rus, were exposed in 1237-1241. Invasion of a huge Mongolian army under the leadership of Khan Batu, or Batu, grandson of Chinggis Khan. When cities were captured, the Mongols used the wall tools used in China. With their help were taken, despite the fierce resistance, Ryazan, Vladimir, Suzdal, Tver, and other cities. Look at the slide. Here is a picture of capturing of Ryazan, one of the eastern Russian cities. A lot of Russian historical sources tell us about capturing of Ryazan land by Batu. One of them tells us about the death of Prince Fyodor of Ryazan. It sounds like that. The godless king Batu came to the Russian land with a lot of Tatar warriors and became on the Voronezh River near the land of Ryazan, and he sent ambassadors of the unlucky to Ryazan to the Grand Duke Yuri Ingvarovich of Ryazan, demanding from him a 10th share in everything. in princes, in all sorts of people, and in the rest. Initially, Ryazan prince proudly replied to the ambassadors, "If we are not there, if we are not alive, then everything will be yours." But the prince learned that he would not be supported in future battle with the Tatars by Grand Duke Yuri Vsevolodovich of Vladimir, and resigned himself. He sent ambassadors with rich gifts headed by his son Fyodor to the Khan Batu. Here is a picture illustrated as a process of negotiations between Batu and Fyodor, Prince Fyodor. Batu Khan accepted the gifts, but he demanded also Fyodor's wife, Byzantine Princess Beauty Yevpraxia. Faithful Prince Fyodor Yurievich Ryazansky laughed and answered the Khan, "It is not good for us Christians to lead to you, the wicked king, his wives for fornication. When you overcome us, then you will own our wives." For his impertinent words, Prince Fyodor was killed according to the order of Batu Khan, and his body was thrown to pieces by beasts and birds. Princess Yevpraxia, having learned of the death of her husband, lovest husband, rushed from the upper chamber with her son, the child, baby John, straight to the ground and broke. Here is a picture of it. You can see that Mongol warrior, according to the order given by Batu Khan, tried to court Yevpraxia with baby John, but Yevpraxia preferred death to the possibility to be captured. And Prince Fyodor, Princess Yevpraxia, and infant baby John, Ivan, in the church memory of the Russian people, are revered as the first martyrs suffered from the Mongol Tatars. Here is on picture a burial place of Princess Yevpraxia, Prince Fyodor, and their son, baby John. Taking Ryazan. Ryazan, on the 16th of December of 1237, was captured. The enemy approached Ryazan and 4 days later took the city by storm. Here is a picture of the siege of Ryazan by the Mongols in 1237. The siege of the city was very cruel and bloody, and when the city was defeated, Prince Yuri Ingvarevich himself and many other princes were killed. Mongols were very cruel towards women, children, and old men and old women. A total majority of them were killed. They were terminated. According to the historical source, we can heard about this battle, and he laid siege to the city and fought for the 5 days unceasingly. Batu army changed, and the townspeople were always fighting, and in the city many people and wives, the children were sword with swords, and the others were drowned in the river, and the priests and monks were left without a trace, and all the hail was burned, and all the glory of beauty of the Ryazan riches. And the temples of God were ruined, and many sheds were shed in the holy altars. And there was not a single living person left in the city. They still died, and they drank a mortal cup together. So a very poor destiny was in Ryazan of their inhabitants. But historical sources tell us about people's hero of Ryazan with the name Yevpatий Kolovrat. The tale of the ruination of Ryazan Batu also tells us about Ryazan hero Yevpatий Kolovrat. Here is a portrait of Yevpatий. During the siege and death of Ryazan, Yevpatий was in Chernigov, having learned about misfortune that befell his city and relatives. Yevpatий with a small team overtook the destroyers of the Ryazan land and suddenly attacked Batu's camp. Here is a picture illustrated a sudden attack of Yevpatий Kolovrat regiment to Batu's camp. And they began to sow without mercy, and all the Tatar regiments were mixed, and Yevpatий beat them so mercilessly that the swords were dulled, and he took the Tatar swords and killed them with their swords, their own swords. And he traveled among the regiments of the Tatars so courageously and bravely that and the Khan himself was afraid. And Batu singled out against the brave man the whole 2 men warriors, estimated of 10,000 Tatar warriors armed with stun guns pieces, and only so managed to defeat Yevpatий. So you can imagine that Yevpatий was wounded several times. He was hardly wounded, but he continued to resist to Mongol Tatar invaders. He was a real hero. And Batu's warriors marveled at the bravery of the Ryazan brave men. We have been to many kings in many lands, many battles, but we have not seen such devils and castors. And our fathers did not tell us. They are winged people. They do not know death. And so firmly and manfully riding on horses fighting, 1 with 1,000 warriors and 2 with darkness, 10,000 warriors. None of them will not live alive from the massacre. Batu, looking at Yevpatий's body after his death, as if he said these words, "Oh, Kolovrat Yevpatий, well you gave me a treat with my little brigade, and many heroes beat my strong corps and broke many regiments. If such a man would have served with me, I would have kept him at my heart." And he gave Yevpatий's body to the remaining people from his squad who were taken to the slaughter. And the king ordered Batu to let them go and not harm them in any way. Look at this picture. Warriors from Yevpatий's regiment took his body. They were permitted by Batu to take his body and to bury his body. Defense of Kozelsk. Be very attentive. You can see here at this slide a Russian 10 rubles coin. 10 rubles coin. This 10 rubles coin, you can find this 10 rubles coin possibly, you can meet it. This 10 rubles coin is devoted to Kozelsk. Kozelsk. This coin is devoted to defense of Kozelsk. The history of Kozelsk defense is one of the most famous and heroic pages in the history of our people. A small town, which at that time numbered less than 4,000 inhabitants, for 7 weeks resisted the most powerful army of its time. This fate of the inhabitants of Kozelsk is worth it so that it will be remembered in 1,000 years. So, in more extended way. The fortress of Kozelsk. The city of Kozelsk was a real impregnable fortress. It was located on a high hill which on 3 sides descended to 3 river-stepped cliffs. From the top of the hill to the water level was about 30 meters, and even for 5 to 10 meters the walls towered, and even about the walls were battle towers. It was pointless to install stone cutting machines at the bottom. A large stone capable of destroying the tower is not thrown at such a height either by a counterweight or by a tensioning device. And at this slide you can see a nowadays place of Kozelsk. The protection of the city was always led by the prince, but in Kozelsk at this time the prince was a young child, Vasily, and the inhabitants of the city decided, although our prince is young, however, we will put our belly for him, and here we will receive glory and heavenly crowns from Christ God. So they decided to resist to enemies with the whole bravery. And for 49 days the Mongol Tatars were besieging the city, a little, very small city. The ditch was already killed by the dead. Finally they succeeded in tricking defenders out to the fortress by cunning. It was a last battle of the defenders of Kozelsk. After a terrible siege, the Mongol Tatars broke through into the fortress, but on the fortress walls the inhabitants fought to the last. Batu lost a lot of his warriors and during this battle. Enraged enemies did not leave a single person alive. All of them, old men, women, babies, were killed. The young prince was drowned according to legend in blood. And look at this side. Look at this slide, please. You can see a monument totally devoted to a young Prince Vasily, who was drowned in blood during the siege of Kozelsk. The Mongol Tatars called Kozelsk an evil city, and here is a special wallboard devoted to the memory of Prince Vasily from Kozelsk and his compatriots, his citizens. Mongol Tatars in 1214 captured Kiev. Batu put his weapon vices and constantly beat them day and night until the city walls were destroyed. Here is a picture illustrated as a process of capturing of Kiev, the most significant city among old Russian cities. The citizens led by Dmitry, a voivode of Kiev, a man of exceptional valor and military talent, scanned the remainder of the fortifications and continued to fight with selfless courage. At the end of the battle, the defenders of Kiev locked themselves in the oldest Desetina church, built by Prince Vladimir, the baptizer of Rus. The church walls could not stand the weight of the gathered people and collapsed. The Mongol Tatars betrayed the merciless beating of the last defenders. Look at this slide, please. Here is a restored view of Desetina, of Virgin, or Desetina church, and at the right side of our slide you can see another view of Desetina church. Здравствуйте. Ага. Мгм. Да, и вот это вот. Значит, мы сейчас распределили это. Две группы пошли, ну, это свой L1, 210, 230, они пошли на семинары, ну, как Значит, одна маленькая подруга со Самары пошла наверх, одну делить по. Ну, она одна, но дело в том, что эта группа по расписанию никак, они их разделили на две подгруппы. Никак они стоят в расписании. Невозможно разделение. Они их обычно соединяют, но разделили почему? Потому что часть иностранцев они сдают зачет в этой подгруппе, а часть идут по программе языка. Ну, поставьте. Ну, поставьте нет. Поставьте нет, вот потерял. Единицу сама. Ну, поделили на пары, если можно расписаться. Да? Конечно. Конечно. Ага, хорошо. Спасибо. So we continue. In December of 1240, Kiev was taken and ravaged, and after the defeat of South Rus, the conquerors moved to Europe. And they won victories in Poland, Hungary, the Czech Republic, and reached the borders of Germany and Italy. But having lost a lot of warriors on Russian land, Batu returned to the Volga region where he formed a powerful state, and he titled his state Golden Horde. In 1242, Golden Horde was established, with the capital in Sarai on the lower Volga river. What are the reasons for the conquest of Rus by Mongols? We can conclude that there were several reasons for the conquest of Rus by the Mongols. The first one, a large, well-trained army of Mongols distinguished by a firm discipline and training. The second reason, using special tools to capture cities which in Russia were considered impregnable. And the most famous, the most influential reason, so-called, it was the uncoordinated actions of the Russian princes who did not want to unite to organize a joint reflection of the invasion, but hoped to wait out the threat outside the walls of their capitals. So it was a direct consequence of feudal dissociation, because each of Russian princes respected himself the most brave, the most powerful, and did not want to help his neighbor princes. What are the consequences of the Mongol-Tatar invasion? Consequences were very poor and very negative for further development of Russia. And some historians recognize the consequences of the invasion as a catastrophic. A significant part of the population was destroyed. If before the invasion in Russia lived 12 million people, then even by the end of the 17th century, the population was not restored 11 million people. So we can conclude that 1 million people died during the time of Mongol-Tatar invasion. Out of 74 cities of ancient Rus known to archaeologists, Batu ruined 49 with 15 of them turned into villages and 14 disappeared altogether. Even at the end of the 17th century, the number of cities in Russia was less than before the Mongol Tatar invasion. Russian princes were obliged to recognize the primacy of the Mongolian khans and receive so-called labels, as special signs giving them the right to reign. The khans issued labels to all the principalities as well as a label to the Grand Duke of Vladimir. Seeking to sow discords among the princes, the horde khans often passed labels from one to another Russian prince. To control the Russian lands and the activities of the princes, they were Beskeks, the khan's governors. So Beskeks were able to collect tribute from Russian lands. Mongol Tatar yoke lasted for almost 240 years until 1480. And now I will tell you about one of the most well-known and one of the most significant Russian lands, the Novgorod Republic. The Novgorod land was far from nomads and did not experience the horror of their raids. The wealth of the Novgorod land was in the possession of a huge land fund, which fell into the hands of local boyars. After the uprising of 1136, the boyars, who had considerable economic power, managed to finally defeat the prince of the struggle for power. Novgorod became a boyar republic. And now, let's listen about Alexander Nevsky. Alexander Nevsky is a national hero of Russian land. Thanks to Alexander Yaroslavich, his nickname Nevsky, thanks to his victory on Neva River, Novgorod inhabitants managed to repel the German-Swedish aggression. In 1240, under his leadership, the Battle of Neva River was won against the Swedish Crusaders. For this victory, the prince was nicknamed Nevsky. In 1242, the ice battle on Lake Chudskoye was won against the German Crusaders. Could not capture the city and the Mongol Tatars, but the heavy tribute and dependence of the Golden Horde affected the further development of this region. Because of the constant struggle for power between the boyars, the management system in Novgorod was unstable. Therefore, later Novgorod land was conquered by the Moscow Principality. And I will remind you once again that Alexander Nevsky is recognized as one of the national heroes of the Russian land. And there is a very motherless temple, a very motherless church in the center of Simferopol, known as Alexander Nevsky Church. And one of the central streets of the one of the central streets of Simferopol, named now in honor of Alexander Nevsky, and we know it as Alexander Nevsky Street. In the 1230s years, Russia was subjected to a simultaneous attack from the west, the Crusaders, Swedish and German Crusaders, and the east, the Mongol Tatars. Forces to resist, and that and another was not. Considering that the Crusaders are the more dangerous enemy, Alexander Nevsky chose in favor of subordination to the Mongols. Their Ordains were neutral to the Russian Orthodox Church. They did not try to impose their customs. Having conquered the Russian lands, they went back to the steppes. German, Swedish, and Danish crusaders, instigated by the Pope, went to Russia for other purposes, to subjugate, stay, and cater for the local population. In the end, Alexander Nevsky's strategy proved to be correct. He was right, suppressing Crusaders' attacks. The Vladimir Suzdal Principality was another Russian principality, very famous, and the Vladimir Suzdal Principality in the future became the core or basis of formation of Moscow state. Yuri Dolgorukiy. First Rostov-Suzdal land went to Vladimir Monomakh. Then his son Yuri, years of his rule, 1125-1157, began to rule. For his constant desire to expand his territory and subdue Kiev, he received the nickname Dolgorukiy, translated into English as Long Hand. Yuri Dolgorukiy devoted his whole life to the struggle for the Kievan Grand Prince throne. Taking Kiev and becoming the Grand Duke of Kiev, Yuri Dolgorukiy did not forget about his northeastern lands. He actively influenced the policy of Novgorod. Yuri led the extensive construction of fortified cities on the borders of the principality. And let's remember a very famous date in our history. Underline, please. Under 1147, in the annals for the first time mentioned about Moscow. Moscow was founded in 1147. And who was the founder of Moscow? The founder of Moscow was Yuri Dolgorukiy, or Yuri Long Hand. A successor of Yuri Dolgorukiy was Andrei Bogolyubsky from 1157 to 1174. In the reign of his son Andrew Bogolyubsky, a fierce struggle with the local boyars broke out. Andrew moved the capital from the rich boyar Rostov to a small town of Vladimir on Klязьма. And in 1169, Andrei Bogolyubsky captured Kiev and moved the capital of Russia to Vladimir. The center of political life was moved to the northeast, and the title of Grand Duke Vladimir has become the main one. And another famous Russian prince, Vsevolod the Great Nest. Why he received the so maybe strange nickname, the Great Nest? Because he had a very huge family, he had a lot of sons, so that's why he received such interesting nickname, the Great Nest. And now, let's talk about Moscow, about the reasons of growing of Moscow. After Batu's invasion, which contemporaries compared with a universal catastrophe, Russia begins to restore its strength. And most intensively, this process took place in the northeast of the former Kievan Rus, in the lands of Vladimir Suzdal Principality. In the 13th, 14th centuries, there was an increase in the population between the rivers Oka and Volga. These territories were relatively far from the Mongol-Tatar aggression region and were covered by the outlying southern and southeastern Russian lands from the Golden Horde. The population flowed from the south, where there was a constant danger from the Mongol Tatars, and from the northwest, which was under pressure from Lithuania and the Order. And now I will tell you about the reasons of growing of Moscow, growing influence of Moscow. Let's have a look. Let's have a look. Revival of the Russian statehood around Moscow. So you can ask me a question: why Moscow has become a Russian capital up for now? Why Moscow? Why it was not another Russian city, for example, Tver or maybe Rostov or Vladimir? Why Moscow? We have a variety of reasons because of the Moscow became a center of association of former Russian lands. So, what are the reasons of revival of the Russian statehood around Moscow? First reason was, look at this slide please, favorable geographical location. The second one was special qualities of the Moscow princes. The first Moscow princes were flexible politicians skillfully using the current situation. And the Moscow princes, as a rule, were long livers, therefore, here the custom of transfer of the throne, not on seniority, and from the father to the eldest son, was approved. Princes just endured all the brothers. The power of Moscow was strengthened by construction in 1367 of white stone Kremlin. So, first Kremlin was wooden made, the second construction of Kremlin was white stone made, and the third construction of Kremlin was, and up for nowadays, red stone made. Support of local nobility, another reason. After the Moscow princes became great, to Moscow boyars and free servants from other principalities stretched. And another reason was support from Orthodox clergy. The Metropolitan Pyotr often stopped in Moscow and died here in 1326. His successor Theognostus finally lodged. And all these reasons were reasons of the growth of eminence of Moscow. What are the stages of the eminence of Moscow? Look at this picture, please. You can see an interesting view of Moscow Kremlin of the 15th century during the time of rule of Russian Prince Ivan III. So the first stage, fulfilled with green color, of 1276 to 1362, the eminence of Moscow. Bitter struggle of Moscow and Tver for a grand ducal throne, which came to the end with the victory of Moscow. The second stage of the growth of eminence of Moscow was national association. It lasted from 1362 to 1425. At this stage, Moscow turns into the all-Russian leader whose superiority was already indisputable. This stage begins with receiving a label of great training by Dmitry Ivanovich. He was nicknamed as Dmitry Donskoy, thanks to victory in a battle of Kulikovo field in 1380. And the third stage was from 1425 to 1462, feudal war of second quarter of the 15th century between Vasily II and his uncle Yuri Dmitrievich, and the final stage of association of Russian lands around Moscow during Ivan III. Please underline and remember years of life of Ivan III from 1462 up to 1505 and Vasily III from 1505 to 1533 board. During the time of Rudolf Ivan III, new Russian lands were under control of Moscow state, of Moscow kingdom, and these lands were Novgorod, was subordinated to Moscow in 1478. Tver was subordinated to Moscow in 1485. Pskov was subordinated to Moscow in 1510, and Ryazan was subordinated to Moscow in 1521. Battle of Kulikovo. What should you know about Battle of Kulikovo Field? This year we celebrated 640th anniversary from the day of Battle of Kulikovo. Battle of Kulikovo is known as Mamai of the Dawn Slaughter, battle of troops of the Russian principalities with Golden Horde on September the 8th of 1580, or according to the old Russian calendar of 6888 from creation of the world, in the territory of Kulikovo Field. Kulikovo Field is located on the southward of nowadays Tula, between the Don River and Nepriadva, in the territory now relating to Klimovsky and Kurkinsky districts of Tula region, about 10 square kilometers. In the 14th century, the Golden Horde endured processes of crushing and disintegration. Khans changed on a throne with a fantastic frequency. Governors of the standing apart hordes looked for happiness in military and extortionate attacks to Russia. Moscow gave support to the neighboring principalities in aggression reflection. The special popularity was gained by fight on the river of Vozha in 1378. The army of Murza Begich, which intruded in the Ryazan land, was beaten by the Moscow group of regiments, which was ordered by the Prince Dmitry. So Prince Dmitry was a very talented military commander. Here is a portrait of Dmitry Ivanovich Donskoy, a Russian prince, Moscow prince. Dmitry Ivanovich was born on October 12 of 1350 and died on May 19 of 1589. He was nicknamed Donskoy for a victory in Battle of Kulikovo. And his opponent, Temnik Mamai, which seized power in the Horde, the campaign against Moscow had a strategic importance. The victory would allow to strengthen its power, to suspend disintegration, and to restore control over Russia. In honor of the Prince Dmitry, princely teams nearly of all Russian lands were presented to northeast Russia. Only the Ryazan and Novgorod groups did not come. Dmitry Donskoy communicated with the famous priest of Russian land, Sergei of Radonezh. The chronicles tells the story about Dmitry's meeting with the abbot of Trinity Sergiuslavra, Sergei of Radonezh, who blessed soldiers on a victory and gave to the prince of two courageous soldiers, monks, Oslaba and Peresved. Historians give various estimates of number of the Russian and Horde troops, from 50 to 4,000 people. According to most of researchers, forces were approximately equal, about 140,000–150,000 people. Before Peresved's fight, participated in traditional duel of athletes. From Tatars, it was resisted by the athlete Cheluby. According to the legend, Cheluby not only differed in the huge force, but also special skill of military training. Some sources specify that Cheluby was an invincible soldier whom the Tatar troops employed especially for similar duels. Alexander Therisfet went contrary to dual logic. Having removed from himself an armor, he remained only in one great scheme. The monastic cape with the image of cross is put on all the monastic clothes. He made in an order that the opponent's spear, having passed through soft tissues of the body at great speed, did not manage to knock it out from a saddle, and then he could strike blow itself, as occurred in fight. Having got a mortal wound, he continued to remain in his saddle, could reach to a system, and only there died. Prince Dmitri, having changed clothes in clothes of a simple warrior, courageously fought on the battlefield. First success accompanied Mamai. Having broken the resistance of the advanced and central regiments, it put in a regiment of the big regiment and tried to crush a regiment of the left hand. Mamai made a mistake. The right flank of the host got to the moment under blow of a special regiment headed by Voivode Dmitry Bobrok and Serpukhov Prince Vladimir. Having hidden a special regiment in an oak grove, the Prince Dmitry showed remarkable talent of a military leader. They became puzzled Mongols in a panic run. Also Mamai, after a while, they killed in the Crimea ran. Here is a scheme or map of the Battle of Kulikovo. What is the value of the victory on Kulikovo field? Value in total was huge. Moscow became stronger in the role of association of Russian lands. Moscow became leader in a process of association of former Russian lands. In the relations of Russia with their Golden Horde, there was a change. The yoke will be removed in 100 years. In 1382, the Khan Tokhtamysh will burn Moscow, burn it out. But the decisive step to release was taken on August the 8th of 1380. So you should remember that victory in Kulikovo field was huge result of Russian bravery and a bravery, personal bravery of Russian warriors, Russian soldiers, and especially Dmitry Ivanovich Donskoy. It was not the end of a Mongol Tatar yoke, but it was a decisive step in a process of liberation of Russian lands from Mongol Tatar yoke. Ivan III the Great. Ivan III the Great. Let's have a look at him. Ivan III the Great. Years of rule 1462-1505. Here is a picture illustrated as the action of Ivan III the Great. In 1476, Moscow ceased to render tribute to the Horde, and Moscow was brave enough to show to the Golden Horde ambassadors that they are person non grata up to now. And at the picture you can see that a great Russian duke, the Duke of all the Russia, Ivan III the Great, orders to Mongol ambassadors to get out from his palace and to get out from Russian land. Mongol ambassadors are very frightened, they are very disappointed, they don't know what to do in such a situation. And as a result of this action of great Russian Duke Ivan III, opponents, I mean Russian army and Mongol Tatar army, met on the Ugra River in 1480. The Russian army was in a district of Kaluga in the town of Kremenets, from where could reach the due time to all movements of the enemy and also blocked a way to Moscow. The army of the Khan Ahmed several times tried to pass the Yugra River into the fort, but is ineffectual. The result of standing of Yugra River was great. From this time, from 1480, just remember, let's have a look once again. Just remember the date, 1480. From the 1480, Russian army was brave enough to stop Mongol Tatar yoke. The date of the year of 1480 was the time of the end of Mongol Tatar yoke. And next time, during our seminar class, you should prepare topic. I remind you. You should prepare topic. '15th century. Topic 15th century and Ivan III rule. And now I remind to the masters of the group to send me a list of present students. Please send me lists of present students present at our today's lecture. Send me, please. I remind you my email, Victorov, mail.ru. Any more questions? If you have no questions, I wish you good luck. Goodbye.